Hey everyone, so Phase 2 is around the corner, and like it's always been the case since the dawn of time in World of Warcraft, your goal once the new patch drops will be to get your character more powerful. If a piece of loot is 1% stronger than another one, then that's enough of an incentive to get it. And there's some insanely good loot to get from the new raids, Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep, with their 6 and 4 bosses respectively. So today we're gonna go over the most noteworthy pieces of loot that SSC and TK have to offer, and talk about them briefly. That way you'll know roughly what you're after and what your guildies are after when you're raiding with them. Keep in mind, however, that this isn't meant to be a thorough gearing guide. For that, Wowhead has some amazing people making their best in slot guides for every class. No, this video is meant to talk about the best of the best pieces that most players will be after. Also, we're only gonna be talking about DPS in this video, and if it does well, we'll also do one for healers and tanks in the future. So without further ado, let's talk about what SSC and TK have to offer. So let's start with the trinket front, as that's usually where you'll find some of the rarest and strongest pieces of loot in general. And well, the thing is, since Tier 5 released along with Tier 4 in original TBC, Tier 4 trinkets are generally still the strongest at this point in time, with some noteworthy exceptions. For example, for Caster, the Badge of Justice trinket, or Quagmiren's Eye, or Eye of Mecteridan for Shadow Priest for example, are what you'll still generally be using in Phase 2. But some noteworthy additions that are BIS are the Mage trinket from Morigrim, Serpent Coil Braid, or Sextant of the Unstable Currents from Fathom Lord Karathras. Both are solid for mages only, but it is situational what you want to be using depending on your hit, the duration of the fight, or even what type of boss you're facing. But generally, don't feel bad if you can't get these, because as I said, Quag Eye, the Badge of Justice trinket, or even the trinket from Terestian are still incredibly strong, and in fact still BIS for all the rest of the casters that aren't mages. On the physical front of things, so melees and hunters, it's generally the same story, where the Phase 1 trinkets are already very strong to still be BIS in Phase 2, if you manage to get them of course. But there are more exceptions than for casters. For example, Darkmoon Card Crusade is gonna be your BIS trinket as an enhancement shaman, so make sure you start collecting your blessings card as a shaman once Phase 2 drops. As a rogue, you have the Warp Spring Coil, a rogue-only trinket that drops from the good old Loot Reaver in TK. This is basically your BIS along with DST, and it will go straight to you if it drops obviously. And then, as a Feral Druid, Arms Warrior or Fury Warrior, you have the Tsunami Talisman from Leothras the Blind in SSC. It is worth noting that this trinket is also quite strong for every other physical DPS, but in general, they're better off sticking with DST and Bloodlust Brush. It's only BIS for warriors and feral druids because of the huge raw AP proc. So yeah, as you can see, trinkets are a bit lackluster in general in Phase 2, because Phase 1 already offered some insanely good trinkets, so those do pale in comparison. But for now, let's move on to weapons, where things do get more interesting. For starter, let's talk about the insanely good bow from Lady Vash, Serpent Spine Longbow. This is basically BIS for anyone who can wield a bow, except rogues. And this is including hunters obviously. But obviously it's so rare that you'll almost never see it go to other melees. And to stay on the ranged weapons front of things, let's talk about wands. Wand of the Forgotten Star from Solarian is also the BIS wand for anyone who can wield them. There's an insane amount of spell power, hit, and crit from this thing, so make sure to go for it if it drops. And then, how can we talk about weapons without talking about the famous Nexus Key? This drops from Kael'thas. It looks amazing and it has some insanely good stats. That being said, you also have Fang of the Leviathan, which drops off Leothras in SSC. So some classes should go for this along with a good offhand, either the Badge of Justice one or the one from Hydros as their BIS. So make sure to check your best in slot list on Wowhead to know what's best for you. But if either of those two weapons drop, don't hesitate to roll for them no matter what your class is, because they're both incredibly strong. On the melee DPS and hunter front, there's quite a lot of options. Let's get Lionheart Executioner out of the way. Bis two-handed weapon for Red Paladins, and also a great option for Arms Warriors if they can't get Twin Blade of the Phoenix from Kael'thas. But the Lionheart Executioner is a crafted weapon which requires Nether Vortex, so make sure to keep reminding your loot console that you need to get this made ASAP. Okay, probably the most iconic melee weapon from Phase 2 are the fist weapons from Alar, Talon of the Phoenix and Claw of the Phoenix. Those are good for anyone who can use them, but they excel for hunters because of the great distribution of stats and the agi on the offhand. Enhancement Shamans and Rogues have the main hand as Bis, so the offhand should almost always go to a hunter. Okay, so those were the weapons. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of weapons here, so if you can think of anything, drop it in the comments to benefit everyone. But moving on to rings and necks now. On the neck front of things for casters, pretty much everyone will be after the quest item from Kael'thas to get the Sun's King Talisman. This is an insanely strong neck piece that's bis for pretty much every caster, except maybe Shadow Priests I think, who will still rock the Trash Mob's neck from Karazhan. That thing is so rare though. But yeah, if you're a caster, always need on the Verdant Sphere from Kael'thas. It always drops and it should be a priority for you to get it. For melees and hunters, there's two noteworthy options. Telonicus Pendant of Mayhem of KT and Pendant of the Perilous of the Trash in SSC. Obviously, you should know which one you're after depending on what stat you want. Interestingly enough, rogues still use the Badge of Justice neck according to Simonize. Not sure why, so if you know, let us know in the comments. On the ring front for casters, an incredibly strong ring for basically every caster, no exceptions, is the Ring of the Endless Coils of Lady Vashj. This, along with the Ring of Recurrence from Phase 1, is gonna be your best set of rings until Black Temple. Although Ring of Recurrence might be replaced by Band of Alar for Shadow Priests, and Ring of Unrelenting Storms for Elemental Shamans. But yeah, the Ring of Endless Coils should be at the top of your priority list if you ever casted a spell in your life. On the melee and hunter front, we obviously have Band of the Ranger General of KT. This is bis for hunters, rogues, fury warriors, arms warriors, and enhancement shamans. It's just a crazy ring packed with some insane amount of stats. And it's not that rare, so do get it when you can. Other than that, for rogues and enhancement shamans, you have Ring of Lethality of Hydros. Rat Paladins and Feral Druids, and both arms and fury warriors have Ancestral Ring of the Conquest of Lurker Below. Lots of good rings for melees in Phase 2, so make sure to check your bis list to know what you should roll for when it drops. Okay, let's move on to cloaks. Cloaks are a mixed bag in Phase 2, very similar to trinkets. A lot of classes are sticking with their Phase 1 bis cloak, like Balanced Druids, Shadow Priests, Fire Mages, Elemental Shamans, Rogues, Arms, and Fury Warriors. But for the rest, when you think of cloaks, you should be thinking about Kael'thas, because this guy drops both Thalassian Welder Cloak and Royal Cloak of the Sunstriders. Those are the typical bis cloak in Phase 2 for hunters, arcane mages, warlocks, enhancement shamans, and feral druids. They are quite common from Kael'thas, at least according to the many times I killed him for Ashes of Alar in retail, so you should get these quite fast if you're after them. But then there's one weird cloak that's bis for Red Paladins, Razor Scale Battle Cloak of Morogrim. This is bis because of the crazy amount of agility and strength that benefits them. Not sure how rare this is, but if you can't get it to drop, Vengeance Wrap is a noticeable downgrade, but still pretty good for you as a Red Paladin. Okay, now moving on to the actual armor pieces. I'm gonna try to keep it simple here because this is a huge mixed bag. Some classes prefer keeping their Phase 1 bis pieces, some others have to craft new ones with Nether Vortex, some even want to break their 4-set bonus. It's just a mixed bag, but I'll try to keep it simple. So starting off, the 4-set tier bonus for tier 5 is pretty much bis for almost everyone. Obviously, there's 5 pieces in the set, but you never want to wear all 5 pieces, because tier 5 is good, but each piece individually isn't the best. You want those pieces for the bonus, and what that 5th piece you're skipping is depends highly on what class and spec you're playing, so make sure to check your biz list on Wowhead to know what that is. That's the main pieces. With that said, moving on to off pieces, there are some usual suspects. Most notably, Belt of 100 Deaths. Every melee, no exceptions, wants this. Not hunters though, just melees, because of the expertise. This drops off Lady Vash, and if it drops, just know that every other melee in your group will be competing with you. And rightly so, it's as biz for them as it is for you. Hunters use Belt of the Deep Shadow, crafted with Nether Vortex. The other usual suspect when it comes to off pieces is Mindstorm wristbands. Drops off LR and is also biz for every caster. Same story here, if it drops, know that no matter what, every warlock, balanced druid, mage, you name it, will need on this, because it's really good. So be ready for some competition. Other than that, for off pieces, you also have boots, but there's way less competition for those, because a lot of people are sticking with blasting boots or edge walkers. But you do have velvet boots of the Guardian from Lurker Below, which is biz for some casters, and war boots of obliteration, which is biz for some melees. Not as much competition for those, but do keep them in mind if you're after them. But yeah, I'll leave it to that when it comes to main and off pieces. It gets really complicated if we try to talk about everything, so I'll leave it to you to figure out what you're after and what you should break your 5 set with. And that's everything for this video. I most certainly forgot some things here and there, and for that I apologize. This video will end up being 20 or 30 minutes long if I covered every good piece of loot in Phase 2, so I stuck to the main ones that will be the strongest. But if I forgot something that you think I should have talked about, please leave it in the comments to help out your fellow classmates not pass on that piece of loot when it drops in their guild. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to give it a like and subscribe to the Classic WoW Curios channel for more content like this. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one very soon. Bye for now.